Guess who's coming to sauna? Heki lunta. Guess who's coming to sauna? Heki lunta.
Good evening and welcome everybody to another episode here of the Upper Bench Sauna Podcast. We've got a lot of people here with us today, so a good mix. I'm excited. We're going to be talking about something that might be a little risque in some people's opinion, but Risto, what's going on this evening?
Well, not too much. I'm joined by my lovely wife, Julie, and this will be a good topic to kind of delve into, sauna and nakedness. And we have a good representation from both America and Finland. So I'm excited to learn in this episode. How are things going with you, Aero?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm a little exhausted. We had a big event on Friday, and I'm lucky to say that everything went extremely well. And to talk about today's episode, but we don't actually have a person from or in Finland as we speak, but we have Finnish American people here, and we sort of represent, both sides of the pond. But yeah, no, this is exciting because this comes along all the time. It's just like whoever you Google, whatever you do, it's a sauna and nudity is a thing. And there's also a lot of discussion about it also everywhere. But we try to make some sense out of this all. So let's turn over to Anne-Marie. How are you?
Well, I'm well, and I don't know if this topic is really my topic, but I try to get my few words in. And yes, I am from Finland. I am not Finnish American as of yet, but I'm just a Finn. But I can give you some maybe guidance or maybe suggestions about this topic that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, well, if you had said this is a topic I'm really excited about, then we might be a little hesitant.
Yeah, no, this is not that.
And then, Anne-Marie, thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective. Before we started recording here, Anne-Marie said she's got an opinion, and I might not like it. So I'm looking forward to, or I might not be expecting what she has to say. So I'm excited to hear her perspective here. And then, Elizabeth, where are you joining us from?
I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay, we've got a great subsection here. Risto, that's up your neck of the woods in Minnesota there. So, Elizabeth, what brings you on the show today? I'm excited. I mean, hopefully, you've done some sauna. Tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get into sauna? And I guess it's hard to say. You can't ask somebody what they know about nakedness. Because, everybody, I think, knows about nakedness, at least in some way, shape, or form. Nobody's throwing on their swim trunks and taking a shower by themselves. So we've all been naked. And so, there's a little bit of a stigma around it. But, Elizabeth, what's your experience with sauna? And, have you been nude in a sauna? Or have you been in a bathing suit? Or what's your experience? And tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, so I didn't grow up with a sauna in my home. I had a sauna at the family cabin eventually, but my first sauna was actually at Sauna, the Finnish language village in Bemidji, Minnesota. And that was the sauna I visited the most before coming back to having a space of my own. So my first sauna was at Sauna, the Finnish language village in Bemidji, Minnesota. And that was when I was like 10 years old. And I went back every single summer. So that was like my sauna and my friend's sauna who came to Sauna to learn about Finnish language and culture. And then eventually we got one in our family cabin in Northwest Wisconsin. We were on the late end of getting a Kuuma electric before they stopped producing those stoves. And then I moved to Finland while I was in undergrad. I moved to Tampere and then had experience in saunas there. And then after undergrad, I moved to Oulu for 2 years and there were saunas there. And so I have done sauna in all of these different settings and contexts with friends, with complete strangers, with, family that or you don't really know if they're from Finland and you don't have a deep relationship with them from growing up and you're just visiting. Yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. I can talk more about nudity later, but I think I'll leave that for my intro.
Great. Thank you. I mean, thank you all for coming on the show here tonight. I promise, we're going to be talking about just what comes natural. And in a sauna, to me, what comes natural is being nude, and if that experience is different, please, speak up or forever hold your peace, because I think, to me, I don't want to be sweating inside of my trunks. That's just, to me, it's gross. It's time to be clean. It's time to be kind of back to basics. So for me, my natural mode would to be nude, but I get it in certain places, especially public saunas or the gym, and might be looked at a little bit goofy, or I might be asked to leave. And so it is, important to make sure what is acceptable and what isn't. You don't want to be the one that crosses the line when you don't know where it is. So it's better to err on the side of caution. You can always drop your drawers, but it's hard to put them back on if they're already down. So, make sure you might want to take it in a layered approach, just like, Minnesota fall. You guys have been having frost. You guys have been having 80 degrees. Can't make up its mind. So yeah, layer up. Risto, what do you think? You guys sauna naked?
Well, we live in town, and our backyard is open to the entire neighborhood. So, and we also didn't grow up, we're not Finnish at all. And so we these days we tend not to sauna naked. And I'm also trying to put myself back in my mindset, rewind the clock 8 years ago before we stumbled into sauna. And naked sauna, I would say, kind of was a weird thing. There was always those stories of someone wandering into the sauna at the club, and there's some old guy naked in there, and it's like, you kind of think weird things about that guy. What's he up to? So that might be a good place for us to start, is kind of like, what's been your experience, if you grew up in America or you've just spoken with Americans, of what do Americans think about nakedness in sauna? What's the someone who's not familiar with sauna, what do they think about that?
Well, I grew up with sauna culture, so to speak, and so growing up in Finland, that was normal to go to sauna naked. But along the years, like when we moved to the United States, I realized it's not that big deal. You don't need to be naked. Well, if I go by myself, of course I'll go naked into sauna because it's more comfortable if I go with my husband. But if there's a group of people coming, or if it's a teenage kids coming in, and I want them to enjoy sauna, I don't want this to be some sort of a hurdle question that, okay, we can go to sauna and everybody's really nervous about this whole thing because everybody has to get naked. Sauna is for relaxation. We are supposed to relax and enjoy and that soothing sauna experience. And then you take a shower and you go back to sauna. But you don't have to have your swim trunks. You can just have your towel around you, wrap yourself in a towel, and it would be fine. And I think that we just have to take this stress away, and people not to feel like, oh my goodness, we are going to pastors now, and we have to go to sauna, and everybody's going to sauna, and we have to undress. And I'm like, that's just weird. So I'm like, I don't care. Like, if people want to wear their bathing suits or their towel, as long as they are extremely comfortable and they truly enjoy that sauna experience, going to sauna, stay there a couple of minutes, take a shower, go and sit outdoors a little bit, go back to sauna, and then one more time, or second time, third time, whatever, however many times you want to go it, or if you want to jump into the snow in between. But let's take the stress out of it.
Yeah, I think, when I first got into sauna, we were super excited and we would talk about everything with our friends. And the nakedness was kind of weird at first, but I think we got used to it. And plus we wanted to learn the Finnish way, not the American way. But then I think some of my friends became a little terrified when I invited them to sauna.
Yeah.
I think they thought I was going to force them to be naked in the sauna. But I'm in agreement with you. I don't think a suit or a towel ruins the experience. But not everyone thinks that in the sauna community.
Well, and that definitely begs the question then, where does that anxiety come from? You know what? Why is it a stressful inducing activity to get naked in sauna? Is that because we didn't grow up with it, or is it because we were told that we shouldn't be naked, or that that's not appropriate? And so, depending on your culture, depending on how you grew up, depending on what you had, and I remember my dad and my mom telling me stories of going to swimming lessons back in the day, and everybody was naked, and that was just it. That's what you did. You went to the pool, you learned how to swim, and you were naked, and it wasn't a big deal. And I apparently, just depending on the community or depending on the region or whatever it was, it could be completely different 2 towns over, because whatever church was over there didn't like it, or whatever other group of whatever followers didn't approve. And so you could have vast differences just 30 miles down the road, not to mention different countries. And so I think, it definitely has a lot to do with how you grew up. But I do think there is that stigma that Eero talked about, where, sauna is very sexualized on the internet, because what is the internet? The bulk of the internet is pornography. And so when that's what sells, unfortunately, the algorithms are going to take advantage of that and really push that content. So I hope, we can do a good job and be good stewards of promoting good sauna content, and that doesn't just, isn't clickbait. You see a scantily clad man or woman in a sauna, but for some reason they're not sweating. And the little knob is turned off and the door is wide open and they're taking pictures. So is that sauna? No, it really, really isn't. So, but I do think that does perpetuate, nudity in sauna. Is it, if I get naked in the sauna, am I going to get propositioned, or am I making a statement saying, hey, I'm that outgoing of a person in that regard? So I think there's a lot to think about, especially Risto, you always bring up a good historical point about there was even some laws in Minneapolis about bathhouses because of how sexualized sauna was. So refresh me, tell me a little bit. I know you definitely tell it better than I do.
Well, and Helvi, are you familiar with what happened with that one? Which sauna business was that? Embrace North. I think they had to move because of some old on the book regulations. Did you hear about that?
I heard briefly about it, but not in any detail, and I haven't visited that sauna space yet, so maybe you should tell it as suggested by you.
Yeah. So I think they had to move because of what I heard was there was an old law on the books that you couldn't have a bathhouse in a residential area. And I think that was probably a holdover from the 70s where bathhouses, and this isn't just unique to America, it happened in Europe and all throughout time, where bathhouses did become connected with sex. And that definitely happened with sauna in the United States. It didn't take long for that to happen with sauna. We sexualize toothpaste ads in the United States, so it's no surprise.
It's true. It sells anything.
I would take a way more simpler approach to this. Like, I don't think most people think that nakedness is weird. I think that people are just simply private and shy. And I think that it's like they just don't feel totally comfortable. And it has nothing to do with the sexualizing necessarily. It's just like your own body image. We all think one way or the other about our bodies. It's not necessarily that you're sexualizing that idea. You're just simply shy.
I actually have a different thought on this as someone who was a Nordic studies major in college. And so we watched a lot of movies from the Nordic countries, and they were not movies that I would have seen on TV or in a movie theater in America without proving that I was a certain age and all of that. Because in general, in the Nordic countries, sexuality is not as, and sex itself is not as like, oh no, I can't watch this, it's so controversial. But what is, and this has been changing, of course, over the years, is violence. And so we actually have the opposite here in America. We have tons of violence. You can see people dying left and right, blood, gore. That's not a problem. I mean, at a certain like age level, we have our like rating system for age and content, but actually seeing nude bodies or sex or whatever is not as metered. I'm not saying it's in kids shows in the Nordic countries or anything, but just in general, the approach to nudity and sex is just vastly different than what we have in America and have had for a long time. And hearing, Sam, you share about your parents' story about swimming lessons, I had never heard that before, but okay. I know there has been a lot of moral policing throughout history in the course of time in America, maybe like 80s time and upwards especially, although maybe not exclusively. But I do agree with Anne-Marie in the fact of like whatever is comfortable for people is what should happen. And it should, there needs to be more dialogue about consent in general when it comes to shared community spaces, including the sauna. So consent with everything. Are we wearing swimsuits? Are we not wearing swimsuits? Am I throwing water at this time, or do I need to wait for you to leave and then I can throw the water? Am I putting a scent in here that you might be allergic to? Do I just do it, or do I ask before? And so I'm a founding member of 612 Sauna Cooperative here in Minneapolis. We started in 2016, and we have been doing a lot of work, including like with the laws on the books, to even be able to get to where we are today. And we are very like, I don't know, we're sort of charting old territory, but it's new because we don't have so many public saunas anymore, or we didn't in 2016 when we were really, building this thing together as a community here. And I would say we've learned a lot along the way, but one of the biggest things that I think some people don't understand, especially people who feel like they're really hardcore sauna people, they make it be like competitive and weird. And you just can't do that in a public sauna setting. Like you have to ask, you have to say, is it okay for me to throw water on the rocks? Is it okay for me to add eucalyptus or whatever? Because otherwise we drive people away from the community and they don't feel comfortable. And I'm not thinking so far along the lines of like, let's do nude sauna in Minneapolis. I actually don't think that's probably a good idea at all. But as far as just like any sauna you're a part of, if it's you're at your own house, like Anne-Marie has hosted saunas at her house, it sounds like, or at a friend's house or a public sauna, just talk and communicate with the people that are there with you. And that might have to adapt if you're in a public sauna and someone new comes in, then it starts over. Are you okay with this? Trust is very important when it comes to vulnerability. And whether you're in a swimsuit or not, I actually think being in a swimsuit is kind of controversial for some people. And like that's enough nudity for them and maybe too much nudity for them. But yeah, just the idea of consent and communication so that people can have a good time and it removes the awkwardness or uncomfortability that Anne-Marie was mentioning earlier is super important.
A couple of good points. There are a couple of things that I want to mention here. First of all, a couple of days back was one of the Finnish tabloid papers. There was an article about public swimming pools and that people have started to use their swimsuits inside saunas more, which is kind of a health concern for these people. So it's regarded as a negative progress in Finland as we speak. Obviously, everybody, even though I think there still might be one swimming pool. When I was a kid, there was one swimming pool in Helsinki where you were supposed to swim naked. But that was the only one. I don't know if they have that thing. They might have that thing going on. But all the other swimming pools, you obviously wear your swimsuit, but not inside the sauna. But my point here is, nothing to me is more asexual than being naked in the sauna. Nothing is more asexual. So it's like, how do we take the sexuality and the nakedness apart?
Hey, Eero, that's a great, question. And I think there's a lot of difference between doing that in a public sauna, and then doing that in maybe a more private setting sauna, or maybe, you know, hosting friends and family. You know, Eero, I got a great question here. You know, you're a part of a sauna group of friends that meets, you know, up in Connecticut, and the Stanford Steamers, if I'm not mistaken. Now, are you guys naked?
No, we're not.
Okay.
We
Now,
wear
is
trunks.
is anybody?
No.
Okay.
No, it's a kind of, well, there's a reason for it. It's well, there are many reasons for it, but it's one of the explanations is the same as Risto brought up. So we are basically almost downtown Stamford, Connecticut. So it is like, you know, if you go running around naked in the backyard, you will end up in trouble. But beside the hot room, that would work. But maybe it's also kind of convenience kind of a thing, because wet trunks, you don't want to like push and pull them, you know, the whole night long.
Yeah. No, and so that's a good, you know, that brings up a good point, because I think, you know, if you're with a group of friends, you know, and you guys are, you know, grew up around sauna or something like that, it's probably going to be a little bit easier, or maybe a little bit more conducive to being naked. You know, who knows? Even, or, you know, you've got somebody that isn't about that. So you know, maybe you do level down to that person. I'm not saying it's down. I'm not looking down upon anybody that wants to be covered up by any means. But, you know, you should be doing the, you know, the least. You know, if somebody's not comfortable being, you know, naked, don't make them wear trunks and everybody else be naked. You know, then you're just, you know, ostracizing that person. So, you know, we're trying to shy away from that, obviously. But then again, too, that begs the question, you know, is it more so because it's mixed gender? You know, maybe, or because it's, you know, like a locker room. Like, is it a locker, like for me in a locker room, you know, at my gym, there's a sauna and it's optional, right? And so you could be either or, and you see either or quite frequently, right? And so, and it's hard to, you know, hey, if I'm going to go into the sauna and there's somebody naked there, it's hard for me to say, hey, I'm not okay with your nudity. I'm going to come, but I want to come in here, you know? So that's a tough line. You know, that's a tough line to say, hey, you know, probably going to be a little bit more respectful to just maybe wait until they leave or something like that, or in vice versa. But, you know, if somebody does come up and ask, you know, I would be the bigger person, be like, hey, you know what, I'll throw a towel on for you. No problem. You know, that to me, that's not a big deal, right? And so it is very easy to be accommodating to anybody that might be uncomfortable or might have, you know, a different viewpoint than your own. Because I see, you know, 6 people sitting around, you know, the Zoom here, and I have a feeling we're all kind of on a different pie wedge, you know, which is quite okay. I still want a sauna with all of you, you know, and so I think that'd be a lot of fun. So these conversations are great, you know, definitely on the bench. But, you know, for me, you know, I was in the military, and, you know, I've probably seen more, you know, naked people than all of you combined. And so for me, it has been completely desexualized, and I'm very comfortable in my own skin, and I'm very fortunate, and I know how fortunate I am to have that feeling about myself. It's taken a long time, you know, to just say, hey, you know what? It's not changing. And if I want to change it, I will. But hey, guess what? This is who I am. And I think having that level of comfortability for me allows me to be pretty open about it. You know, if you want to be naked, good, go for it. I don't care, because I'm me, I'm over here, and it doesn't affect me. But I can definitely tell where, you know, someone might have some preconceived notions, or might have previous traumas or previous whatever, you know, they just might not be comfortable in their own skin yet to be even comfortable around somebody else's skin, let alone, you know. So, you know, be accommodating and be respectful. You know, it is, that's the golden rule, right? But I do think it is interesting, because you know, sauna to me, you know, if we could all kind of make that a safe space. You know, I really do think that is the safest space that I know of, where there are no, you know, there's no not say boundaries, but there's no, you know, preconceived restrictions. There's, you know, I don't have any expectations. You know, I'm just in there for me, and I love sharing it with people. But at the end of the day, I'm just in there for me. So whatever you do over there, as long as it doesn't affect me, good, you know, good on you. So, but, you know, I'm hoping people, you know, could open up there, because if anyone, you know, wanted to be a little bit more comfortable in their own skin, I would hope a sauna would be a place where they could start.
Yeah, I think that all of this makes a perfect sense. And I want to go back to what Helvi was saying earlier. It's sometimes it's not only about, okay, how do you feel being naked in sauna, but if you go into sauna naked and others are not, how do they feel? Like you're kind of like pushing your own nakedness down their throat, and they may feel equally uncomfortable about it, even if you feel okay. So being considerate a little bit on that, and then genders, like saunas, okay, all boys go to sauna first and then girls go next, and or it's a mixed. But I think that, to Helvi's point, a consideration is a big deal, and when we are trying to change this perception that Eero was mentioning, I think that kind of like taking baby steps in this matter, and rather than pushing it forcefully forward, I think baby steps work better.
Completely.
Well, and there's we have, I think I've even seen it in this conversation. There's a bit of a bridge that needs to happen between two cultures. And sometimes it's very difficult to understand the other culture. It's like a fish in water. Does the fish notice the water that much? Probably not as much as the person outside the water. So it's very much the normal American view for our Finnish listeners that naked people is a sexual thing for Americans. Not all Americans. There are going to be some exceptions, some pockets of exceptions, maybe some generational exceptions. But certainly for my generation, it's going to be the majority. All you have to do is look up the Rhonda Patrick clip with Joe Rogan talking about when she visited sauna in Finland. And that's going to be normal. So it's going to be those two big hurdles for Americans, seeing it as a sexual thing and then also being very self-conscious about your body. And then Americans we have trouble understanding that Finnish perspective where it's not as big of a deal and it's part of bathing, and that nakedness could exist in that instance, but not everywhere. I can't just walk around my apartment building naked in Finland. Like as Americans, it's hard to understand that context.
Yeah, I have done actually, I think, quite a lot of bit of thinking about this topic just because I lived in Finland twice and I was totally raised American. My sister and I are the first in our family since our great-grandmother and her nuclear family to speak Finnish and to actually have some kind of deep Finnish cultural connection, and it's part of our identity. And so when I went to Tampere, actually when I went to Finland for the first time was in between junior and senior year in high school, and I went with my grandma on my Finnish side. And she had been in Finland before, and we were staying with relatives in Espoo. And our relative, Heli, who is female, asked us if we would want to go to sauna with her. And I was thinking immediately, like, oh, she's probably going to want to sauna naked because we're family. And we just did that. And it was really weird for my grandma. It was kind of weird for me, but I was the youngest woman. And so I'm just like, if these ladies are willing to go sauna naked with me, I'm not going to like look at them. That would be weird, but I'm going to go sauna naked and it'll just be a thing. We were in Heli's home in a room with a tiny little window to the outside, and it was night, and the sauna was not bright. It's not like an operating room level of brightness. It was very comfortable to be in there. And then when I moved over to Tampere, we had a sauna in every single one of our student housing units that were operated by the Student Housing Association in the city that we were in. So there was one in Tampere, and then there was one in Oulu. And each of those apartment buildings had at least access to one or more sauna spaces. They were always electric, for me at least, in these buildings. And there was a night where it was open to everyone. And you could just go, and whoever showed up, showed up. And those were always it was just understood that you would wear a swimsuit because who knows who's going to be there. Let's not even waste time in having these discussions about consent. Like, just show up in your bathing suit, not make a big deal about this. We didn't even really talk about it in the sauna. We just did sauna, like a bunch of international students in my first apartment in Tampere. And then when I moved to Oulu, I was in more of a mix of Finnish students who grew up in Finland and international students in both of the housing places I lived. And that was a different thing. So in that saunas in both of those apartments. There was shared sauna space, but you could rent like for free, because you already were in the apartment building, sauna space and reserve it for like an hour. And you just signed up online and you're like, I'm going to be there alone. And then it blocked it out, and people looking online knew you could not come. There was a lock on the door. So you could do whatever you wanted in there with whoever you wanted, theoretically. Like, you could invite your friends, and sometimes I had other friends, and it was yours for that amount of time. And then on other days of the week, there was always a day for people who identified as women and people who identified as men. And so it was anyone could come if you identified as one of those genders. And that worked pretty well. And you would just meet whoever came. And at that point in Finland, it was my third year having lived there. And I'm just like, I don't care which woman walks in this building. I know she's probably going to be a student, so about my age. And I know that the rule is pretty clear, and there's signs in English and Finnish and Swedish. And so there should be kind of no confusion, even from international students. Like, I felt very comfortable to do that with random Finnish and international students. But there was one time when it was a women's night, and I was there, and I was all by myself, which sometimes happens. And an international student, probably from Asia, but I'm not sure because we didn't really talk, who was male, walked in and got so red, and he covered his eyes and he backed away. He was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And like was so embarrassed. And I had been in the sauna probably for like an hour. And I was like, oh, hey, like I had like sauna brain. I was like in complete bliss mode. I had like a pehletti, which is a type of towel that you can sit on and probably should sit on in the sauna, like a thin linen cloth. And I took note of that event, obviously. And I've told this story many times, but it was kind of funny to me, and it's still funny. And I just hope that international student wasn't turned off or scared of sauna after that. And I don't know what else could have been done with signage or something to communicate what night of the week it was or something. But that was an interesting experience for me. But I really had to, growing up as an American, just gradually get comfortable with the idea of that for myself. And since returning to live in Minnesota, I have saunaed in people's private saunas, naked with other women. I've also saunaed in mixed company if we were all friends and we talked about it ahead of time, with one of my Swedish American friends and myself and my boyfriend. And that was kind of a cool experience because that was my first like friend hang sauna that was completely nude. It wasn't weird. The host was the Swedish American friend, and she was really good. She's actually taught me a lot about sharing spaces. She's very sensitive, and so she's automatically turned off if anyone's throwing any random scent. But yeah, it can be really a great time if people understand that that's what's going on and they agree to that ahead of time. But yeah, it's fascinating. I really love thinking about sauna culture. And that's something, obviously, I never saw at Gustavus at Altus College, where there was a sauna. Finlandia, I think, stove by the pool. There were people wearing all sorts of things in that sauna. And I've been to gyms here recently, and it wasn't that people were wearing too little clothes. I actually was offended that they were wearing their gym shoes and like leggings and workout clothes. And I'm like, what are you doing? But to be real, like the sauna wasn't even that hot and you couldn't throw water. There was a sign. So I'm like, okay, it's not a real sauna experience for me. I just am fascinated that these ladies are TikToking from the sauna. Also, having your phone in the sauna, no. I'm more concerned about phones in the sauna than nudity in the sauna, but I'll let someone else talk now.
I love it.
It's interesting when you talk about the Asian student walking in. So I'm Cambodian. I was here born in the States, but my family's Cambodian. And so we're very modest. Like nudity is, it's shameful. Like you shouldn't be nude in mixed public. Like maybe if you're with females, it's more okay. But even within same sex groups, like nudity is not a thing. You need to be covered. You need to be modest. And so the idea of being naked, throw that on top of what America thinks of naked is, I'm like double, like I don't want to be naked. And so, when we first started learning about sauna and we really wanted to learn the Finnish way, Christopher's like, well, we should sauna naked. And I mean, it was weird for me, even with just my husband, to sauna naked, just the two of us. It was very uncomfortable for me. I think part of that is just maturing into your own body, and then maturing in your relationship, that then like it became less weird, and we didn't grow up with washing in the sauna either. So going in with the suit was fine. Like, it didn't take away from the experience or anything. But the interesting thing for me is when we sauna here at home, the last like probably couple of months, I'll do a round by myself and I'll actually wash in the sauna, and I'll be by myself. So I'll undress, and our sauna's pretty private. So then I would walk into our house with a towel, and I loved it. Like, I loved being able to walk out of that sauna completely clean. And I think as much as I don't want to necessarily push nakedness in sauna, I think that concept of cleanliness is a whole nother level to sauna that I think as Americans we don't appreciate, I think, as much. And so, I'm definitely in agreement with you ladies and Sam and Eric. Like, I think it is good to be aware of what people want. And, like my mom, she's Cambodian. She loves to sauna. She's never going to sauna naked. Never, 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 ever. I just know that she never will. Even if it's just me and her, or her and, by herself. I don't even think she would sauna naked by herself, because it's so ingrained in her that she shouldn't be naked unless she's doing sexual things, And so I think that's kind of how, so that I think going for me to, the only time I've ever sauna naked is with Christopher and with our family, and even with our kids as they got older. We stopped sauning naked with them as they got older. And the only other time I've done it is we went to Ely, Minnesota, and used a public sauna there. And it was split men and women. And so I went into the women's locker room and I was like, okay, do I go naked or do I wear my suit? Like, I'm debating with myself in the locker room, like, what should I do? I don't know. Cause I knew that there were other people in there. I could hear them. So I was like, well, are they naked? But then I think I looked over at their stuff and I could see that their underwear was there. So I was like, okay, I think they're nude. So then I went in with just my towel, and they were nude, but they had their towels around them. And we were just chatting, and it was fine. It was two younger gals who had been camping. And then I think they were getting ready to go, and I was still in there. And this older lady came in, and she walked in. She was holding on to her towel. She just walked in and just was like super comfortable, flopped down on the top bench, and we just started having a conversation. And I think for me, I was like, she's so comfortable in her own skin. And, and she does this every week. She and her friend meet every week at the sauna, and her friend happened to be sick that week, so she was just there by herself. But I think for me, it was like, oh, our society, our culture, I feel like women are meant to be constantly, you have to be self-conscious about your body. You have to be constantly looking at and going, oh, this is what I need to change this. I need to lose this. I need and to kind of meet somebody who just walked in and she didn't care who was in there or what was going on. She was there to sauna, and she was there to relax and wash up and enjoy the evening and not worry about what I thought of her. And I didn't think anything of other than admiration for her confidence. And I think it's hard I think as women, as females, like, there's a sense of like, you can't be too confident because then you'll come off as arrogant. But you should be comfortable in your own skin. And I think that's something that I've learned reading Finnish books about sauna, and like the women going in together, and you've got girls who grew up just seeing naked bodies of different shapes and different sizes, and moms and aunts and grandmas who weren't concerned. They were just there to be together, to be in community, and to enjoy each other's company. And so I'm hoping that I've instilled that into our daughters, to like, and for me to stop saying like, oh, I wish I was skinnier. Oh, I wish I was this, or I wish I was that, and just go into the sauna. And that's not the place for that. Like, that's You are created in God's image and you are beautiful, and you can be comfortable in your own skin, and that's okay. And I think sauna has actually taught me that, to not be so self-conscious. Like, what a waste of time.
Well, Americans like have two speeds. It's like either like ashamed, cover up, or flaunted. We've got those two, it's like more of that middle way is kind of what we're missing.
Oh,
I think about I love the fact when you said that you're going with your husband, you're going to sauna naked with your husband, but it feels less weird, but it still feels a little bit weird. So that is interesting, and I think that when we have to think about what we look like, am I wearing this or am I wearing nothing? If we really have to think about it so much, it takes away from sauna experience. Now, do you think, like, if you constantly think like, am I wearing a towel? Am I wearing bathing suit? Can I go this way or that way? And who is coming in? What do they look like? They are in their birthday suit. So it's kind of like that takes away from that experience. And Eero, I'm throwing it back to you because you always say that we want to present the best sauna experience and teach that to everybody. I don't think that nakedness is really the hurdle for that. It makes it better, but you can do it in private and enjoy that. But if you really have to constantly think about it, like what everybody looks like and is everybody comfortable now, it's not relaxing.
That's a good point. But then at the same time, and I will get back to the other points, but I'm a middle-aged man. When I have my good IPA and my sauna, I don't give a hoot how I look or how anybody else looks. It's just something like it's way out there, in my mind at that point. But yeah, so it's this. You're mentioning that it's not like it can be a hurdle. True. And when Sam was asking about, when I first went to meet my buddies at the sauna in Stamford, I obviously did not bring my swimming trunk. I did not bring that thing, and I was the only one, basically. Me and one other guy, we were the only ones naked, and it sort of I don't know, but it's sort of it feels weird, to be like the only one there, or one of the two. But so it's like there's a lot of combination of the two. It's either or. That's the way it's supposed to go. But yeah, so this is one of the reasons why we wanted to get you guys together this evening, because it should not be a hurdle, but it's a huge thing. People always talk about it, and it is like with the social media, there are misconceptions that are like forced into us. So it's like we should have an answer. I've been with the North American Sauna Society. I've been trying to think about it for 20 years, and I don't really have a good answer. But like Helvi was saying, like this is not a hurdle towards the good sauna experience. But what Helvi said about the people in the gyms in full exercising gear, sneakers on inside the sauna, TikToking, that is a problem. Nakedness is not a problem, but that is a huge issue.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Errol. If you got shoes on, that's a sin in the sauna. No shoes, and maybe some flip flops. I get it. An athlete's foot runs rampant in those, those public saunas. I definitely recommend the shower shoes, but it's a rubber sandal. If you've got socks on, that you are wrong, people. You are absolutely wrong, and I will call you out for it every time, because then I see you 10 minutes later out there lifting weights in those same socks, in those same shoes. And you know what? There's just a little bit of butt sweat that I can still see on your sweatpants. You've been sitting in the sauna, dude. What do you think was going to happen? So, it's brutal, guys. Get in the sauna. I get it. Swim trunks are just fine. Take a shower and then go out there. But if you're going from the sauna directly out to the gym floor, you are absolutely wrong. You are bringing everything from that sweaty, dirty sauna, because it's a gym sauna. It doesn't get cleaned that often. You're bringing
Yeah,
that
that's
all out there.
disgusting. Ugh.
Yeah. Oh, I see it every day. Every time I go to the sauna, at the gym, in town, I see it every day. And it is brutal, people. You don't got to be naked, but you can't be doing that. I recommend, reevaluating your life, really.
But they are sweatsuit. They are wearing a sweatsuit, and you are supposed to sweat in your sweatsuit. Or
yeah.
you put your tuulihosut. What's that in English? I don't even know. But then you really sweat because sweat is not even...
I had friends growing up in high school that were wrestlers, and what they would do is they would basically duct tape garbage bags to themselves and then get underneath an electric blanket and sweat it out so that they could make weight for wrestling, because they had to lose 2 or 3 pounds, and it's what these guys are doing they think they're doing that in the sauna because they've got a big MMA fight this weekend. I'm sure they're sponsored by whoever. No, you're not that special, guys. It's okay to be naked. I'm not making fun of you people, but seriously, and I'm not saying that I want to see anybody naked. I really don't. Most people I don't want to see naked, and that's just fine by me. But guess what? I don't care. At the end of the day, it doesn't affect me. I'm probably more in the Arrow crowd where, guess what? I'm in there for me. And if you see me naked, hey, good for you. I don't care. Take a picture. It'll last longer. Just don't put it on the internet. But, Risto, Arrow, what are we missing here? What should we end with? I think we could really talk this topic to death and probably be here for another 2 or 3 hours based on social media, just, self-esteem issues, cultural influences, how we grew up. I think there's a lot of pressures around nudity in the sauna. And it is. Helvi hit the nail on the head. Consent is always the best practice. If you don't know, ask. People, there are no stupid questions, especially when it comes around hurting somebody's feelings with your nudity. The best thing you can do is be cautious and be respectful. So if you don't know, ask. Peek your head in there. If there's naked people in there, it's probably okay to be naked. If there's not, maybe ask. You know what? Maybe they don't care, but maybe they do. So it's always better to ask. I love that.
Well, I once heard an anecdote, and I don't remember where I heard this. I wish I did. I should have taken a note. But it was an anecdote about some Finnish women, part of a women's group at a Lutheran church, and they sauna together naked, and everyone's okay. And it's a very conservative church. And then they get together for a meal afterwards, and one of them has a blouse that's a little too low cut, and that's scandalous. But so that... hearing things like that helped me kind of understand that a little bit. And I think we have a long way to go before Americans can really understand what that Finnish perspective is. And I think it's okay to get into sauna and not ever be naked at all. Totally okay. But I would want to make a sales pitch for sauna and nakedness. I think it's better for washing. I think it's good to learn to kind of get over yourself a little bit. It will help you be more comfortable with yourself. And it's just kind of also just more free and simple when you just walk with your clothes somewhere. Like Arrow went to the Stanford Steamers the first time. You don't have to worry about bringing a swimsuit or anything. And then you walk back out with your clothes. So that's kind of my sales pitch for it's a nice thing that's a part of sauna, but you can still experience so much of sauna without that as well.
Agreed.
I feel...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What do you think? What do you think around nakedness? Are you going to keep being naked, or are you going to cover up?
I think it's kind of the same thing as we talk about what's the right heat, what is the right temperature inside the sauna room. There are different views on that. Some like it hotter, some like it not that hot. I'm gonna keep doing just what I feel comfortable with. And that's the way it is, and we can, it's like we are not on a mandate to push nudity. That's not we are on a mandate to increase sauna. But obviously, having said what Risto just said, is like if you think about the origins of sauna, obviously totally naked, bathing. And feeling like a reborn afterwards because you've everything is so clean about you mentally, physically, everything. So nakedness is the way to go, but I wish that was the only, coming back to what Anne-Marie said before, I wish that was the only problem we had with the quality of sauna. But thanks, at this point, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah. Helvi, closing thoughts. What would you share with those that are new to sauna and they're maybe a little bit concerned about being naked?
Yeah, so one thing I for sure want to say is also making caveats. So we live in a very globalized world. We have people from all regions and all different regions of the world. And I happen to know a few like Muslim women who would never, ever, ever, even with other women, be naked. And so they might wear what to me looks like gym clothes, like leggings and a long sleeve top and a like thing that goes up to here and maybe even a headscarf, I'm not sure, into the sauna or into the pool or wherever in life they are as adult women. And yeah, that's probably a whole nother topic of conversation. And I'm not an expert by any means, but I just want to make sure that that is said, because I think that there's a lot of work to do everywhere of just making sauna be a really welcoming place. And I think what we're all sort of saying is in order to feel welcome somewhere, you have to be comfortable there. And whatever that means to you is what it means to you. And you don't know what that means until you ask.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think
Come into our oven.
Yeah, go ahead.
Come into our oven. That's that's the welcome. Come into the oven.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure,
And you don't know. Yeah, you don't know what people are comfortable with until you ask. And then again, if you're asked, you also have to be comfortable enough to share your preferences. Don't feel pressured into, doing anything just because everybody else is. If you're not cool being naked, you don't have to be naked, people. And it's okay to say, hey, you know what? This is how I do things, or this is how I feel about things. Don't be afraid to speak up, because, hopefully you're in a place where, this is sauna. Like I said, I hope it's a safe place. We can be open with whatever our true selves are. And there is a judgment-free zone, complete judgment-free zone. I don't care what flavor you are, what color you are, what size you are. I really just want to make sure that you keep the door closed. That's my biggest concern. Throw some water around. Anne-Marie, would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that whatever makes you comfortable and make sure that everybody around you are comfortable, to try to get the best experience out of sauna. And obviously it's a little bit harder in a public setting. In private homes, it's easier because you can have that discussion openly. But if you go in naked, remember to have your sauna hat. That's a key. Nothing else matters. Just have your sauna hat on. And I think that another topic could be, and maybe you guys have had this already, like, are you supposed to talk in sauna or are you supposed to be quiet?
That's a good topic. That is a very good topic. Yes, we're going to take you up
That's
on
a good
that.
Yeah, that's a gender topic, I think, also.
Oh, that's interesting.
I like that. No, thank you guys. I appreciate you all for joining us this evening. We're going to wrap it up here. But no, again, there's a lot more questions, comments, concerns. I know you all are missing something here, but hopefully we hit a couple topics on the head here for you. Hopefully we opened your eyes up a little bit around, maybe you're new to sauna and you're looking at getting involved in sauna. It doesn't have to be about nakedness. It doesn't have to be about shame or sexuality or whatever the heck you might have this preconceived notion as. It's a fun time, people. I promise you, it's good for you. You're going to enjoy it. And if you want to be naked, go find the place that it's comfortable to be so, and it's welcomed. But again, ask before you do anything. But again, thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure. Again, we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Guess who's coming to sauna? Heikki Luntta